really got his success because he would have all sorts of differing viewpoints on his show. Right, left, moderate, I'll talk about everything in a long format, which of course now is verboten in this society. There is no nuance. It's black or white. But anyway, he was talking about the crucifixion and thought it was interesting because he pointed out some of the things that made it so horrible, and it's nice to see that at least some semblance of this super fallen world that is so horrible and so wicked. There are some people who might not have the light that we have, but still can appreciate what Jesus went through to some degree. So I was kind of discouraged on Friday because I saw the pictures of the 6 people who were murdered in Nashville. And all this horrible stuff. I'm used to horrible stuff as far as the world. It doesn't really surprise me, but having a young lady, I don't know if any of you have seen her when she was younger. She was a very pretty young lady, smiling in her pictures and stuff. And, this was not somebody but somehow at the age of 28, she coldly, methodically planned out murder for children. And it's just, honestly, that got me down. This stuff doesn't get me down very much, but it got me down. So, but I had to remind myself, when I was preparing for my lesson, I was, in chapter 10, verse 2, treasures of the wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. And there's countless verses in here. Violence covereth the mouth of the wicked, violence covereth the mouth of the wicked, the foolish is near destruction. God, we don't have to stress about this stuff, although it's horrible. God's timeless. The wicked will suffer. The wicked will pay. The wicked that corrupted this young lady will pay, and she will pay. And I don't like people to pay. Normally it's easy to, one of the ways that guys react to any bad news or something is react with anger. They're like, oh, well, fry them, hang them high, that kind of thing. And it's weird because you look at this young lady and you're like, what on earth happened? And I don't actually feel that way towards her. I just feel sad and confused that this is where our world is today, that a young woman who should have been getting married and having children goes and murders people for no good reason. She wasn't tortured or abused or held in chains in a basement and lashing out. With men, it's easy to understand because men, we have all this testosterone. And guess what? That makes us angry lots of times. So guys are always trying to control their temper. It is every day, whenever I snap at my wife or something, which is too often, but I'm working on it and trying to get better. It's like, well, what's wrong with you? Well, guess what? I'm always angry. That's just the way I am. Some people are more good-natured, but guys always, because we have this testosterone, women don't have that. And so it's so much more shocking, and it's so much worse when you realize what this means. But I can take comfort in knowing that God's in control, that I have a home in heaven, that the wicked will pay. It's not today, but God transcends time. We look at time on this linear scale, but God is timeless. And so these wicked are already punished. We just don't see it. I should have looked up the verse about In this world you shall have tribulation, but don't fear because I have overcome the world. I'm mangling that verse. But anyway, I guess I would just say, whenever you get discouraged by what things are going on, just try to encourage yourself that the wicked is pain. We just don't see it in our very narrow view of time. So, we've been talking through Proverbs, and Kelly's really good at repeating stuff, and I feel like, I keep repeating things, it's boring and stuff, but I realize not every one of you make it to every service, and Titus wasn't here for the first part of Proverbs where I talked about a lot of this stuff. And so Proverbs is a book on wisdom. That's the primary theme. It also has the fear of the Lord in there, so you can argue about the themes if you want, but I don't really care. I think it's a book on wisdom largely, and wisdom has some components. And if you look in, let's see here, I think this is one of the things that I didn't realize, that we think of wisdom as just kind of this nebulous, you're smart, but you know what to do. But it's more than that. So in chapter 1, verse 2, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. Why men over women? Well, men are supposed to be the leaders. It's obviously important for wisdom too, or for women to have wisdom too, but men are supposed to be the leaders, so it's focused, it's pointed at them, because if they don't have the wisdom, they can take a wise woman that they're married to, and you can have a disastrous marriage. But if you have a wise man and maybe a somewhat foolish wife, you can still make something of that. Wisdom and instruction to perceive the words of understanding. So I asked Titus, do you remember what I told you? What are the components of wisdom? Okay, so you have to have the knowledge and the understanding, and sometimes we just think about the understanding. But it's more than that, because there's lots of people who understand things, but they still carry out a foolish action. Okay, I understand it's not wise to quibble with my wife over something, even though she's technically incorrect. Hopefully the speaker's turned down. But because of pride, I might choose to argue with her anyway. She needs to be corrected. We don't want our wives, making a mistake and going out and telling somebody else that, I don't know, the capital of Alaska is Anchorage. That would be devastating. It's not. It's Juneau. And no, we didn't argue about that. So wisdom, you have to have the knowledge first. Knowledge, instruction, something. That's why you come to church. Big part of it. There's other reasons, but you come to church, you get fed. And that's getting fed, you're feeding your brain and your soul. You get knowledge. And hopefully, you understand it. If you have the knowledge but you don't understand it, it's of limited value. You can know what the Pythagorean theorem is, but if you don't know where to apply it in life, which most people don't, because they don't really need to, it's not really useful. So Proverbs is great because it gives you all these very practical applications. And that's why reading through it every day is a great thing to do. Because even if you go, I've read this before, you'll find 2 years later, you find something new in that chapter. One of the parallels to what I would say knowledge, understanding, and wisdom is justice, judgment, and equity. And you'll see that a few times in the Bible. Justice is the knowledge. It's knowing what the facts are, and then knowing this is legal, this is illegal, and then judgment is being able to pick the right one, and equity is actually the dispensation of that. So it's making that it's actually carrying through with that. So justice, judgment, and equity, I believe, are parallels to the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. When we last talked, I said how the foolish is near destruction. His mouth is writing checks his body can't cash. It gets him into trouble all the time. And you have to watch that. And then we went to James chapter 3. We talked about how the tongue is like the rudder on a ship. And I have been convicted recently about my tongue. It's too liberal with some improper speech, and so I've been working on that. And every time I say something I shouldn't, I confess it. And Jordan Peterson, the guy I mentioned earlier, I was listening to something he had. He's like, when you say things out loud to yourself, you make them real. It actually forms in your mind then. It's not just some nebulous thought. So when you confess your sins to God, you're saying, oh, this thing that I did, pick anything you did this morning, because I'm sure there was probably a sin there somewhere. This thing that I did was wrong, and it's not okay, and I need to stop. So it's important to confess your sins in order for you. It's like the first step of any addict or whatever is admitting they have a problem, right? And that's what you do when you confess your sin. Otherwise, you don't have a problem. You can quit anytime you want. That type of attitude. Sorry, where was I? Let's go to James. I'm sorry. Let's go to James chapter 3 for a minute. There's something. I want to talk a little bit about what you can do, how the tongue can produce good and how it can produce bad. And then that relates to the next verse. All right, so in verse 11, doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine, figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him shew out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. Interesting. So we're talking about wisdom here and the tongue. So why am I dwelling on this so much? Because not the next verse per se, but verse 16, the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, and the fruit of the wicked to sin. So back in Proverbs. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life. So what does that mean? It means we are trying to nurture life. We're trying to build things up. It's one of the reasons we are against suicide. It's one of the reasons, God gives us our basis for all these things, right? This is partially where. Against suicide, against abortion, even in cases of rape and incest, that's tragic, right? But why are you murdering something? It's politically radioactive to say that's not okay, but it's still true. Murder is murder. Murder is murder. It's still murder, right? Is it murder or is it not murder? If it's murder in one way, it's still murder in another way, as unfortunate, as inconvenient as that may be. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life. This is our fruit. What are we doing? What do we output? What value are we providing? Is it something that lifts up? Is it something that tears down? Okay, and we are human, and so we make mistakes. But in general, if you're saved, unless you're wildly backslidden, you will be producing positive fruit, good fruit. So there's good fruit and there's bad fruit. Just like the fountain can produce fresh water or salt water. I mean, how disappointing is it to think you have fresh water when you're thirsty, and then you find out, oh, it's polluted. I mean, it can be polluted with a dead animal. It could be polluted with toxins. It could be polluted with lots of different things. So the fruit is kind of how we as people can judge other people. What do they do? Are they doing good things? Are they doing bad things? We look and see what their actions are. We're judging people by their actions because we can't see their heart. You know, when MJ and Titus met, and I was unhappy about that for reasons that you all know. You know, I didn't know MJ as a person, and so I couldn't judge her other than anything that I knew certain facts by, which was she wasn't saved. That's all I knew. That's a pretty big thing. So I was, I tried not to be hostile towards her, but it was like she was a threat in my mind. But, once she becomes saved, and I've seen the character that she has, it really changes things. I've seen her fruit. I've seen how she has, she lives in Boise, She's here at church more than people who live in, Payette or Fruitland or Ontario. So, that's some fruit, and you can make some judgments by that. And if somebody who is saved never comes to church, right, and that's when we make other judgments. And sometimes I try to be really careful because I don't want to be judged by my critical standards, right? I try to give, it's not my business what other people's church attendants are. They have their life. They have their work shifts. I miss them when they're not here, just like I am told that I am missed when I'm not here. But the fruit's important. And I think where this, I want to say that we have to be careful, and I know our pastor knows this, but judging people based on their fruit you can use it like a cudgel. I have seen pastors do this. I went to Bob Jones University, and that was a very judgmental place. And not a great experience in many ways as a Christian, because everybody there was a Christian. I mean, most of them were genuinely saved. So, kind of made you realize Christians are pretty much just normal people too. And the fruit, judging people by their fruit, you have to be careful on what is their fruit. I mean, should you be judging them? First of all, is it your place? But let me give you an example. I've seen pastors say, well, let's talk about tithe. We had an instance where, we needed money in the church. So preach about tithe, and then it's like, okay, money, roll in. Okay, well, you can't impose your will. God doesn't do that, right? Kelly talked about that. He doesn't have automatons. He doesn't make us do things. The Spirit has to move in our heart. And just like MJ wasn't saved in the first time she heard the message, and there was a gentleman in Japan, I remember reading a prayer letter, he went for 6 months and before he got saved, right? This stuff doesn't happen overnight, and so it can be challenging if somebody is expecting these fruits. Also, guess what? People produce different fruit. You don't expect an apple tree to produce a pear, do you? Now, this may be an imperfect analogy, but not everybody is the same. And I know that's shocking to you, but that's why we have gifts, different gifts, okay? I don't sweat. I mean, I'm concerned that I do a good job teaching, that I glorify God with what I do, but it doesn't make me nervous to come up here and talk to you. For some reason, it doesn't. Okay, that's the way God made me. It makes me nervous to do everything else in my life. Just apparently not this. I would have become a teacher, except I saw they don't get paid much and they get treated really horribly. Keep losing my place. I'm sorry. All right, verse 17. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. We always need to accept correction. Young men are like, they're the worst of this, although I've seen many older men be very bad. Constructive criticism, nobody likes it, it seems like. Although, if somebody says, hey, I have a suggestion, take it or leave it, if you address it in the right way, but you have to like build this path, and it takes energy, and most of the time it's easier just to ignore it. But you can make a suggestion to that person about something, and then they can take it or leave it, and hopefully they will, if you did it in the right way with the right attitude, and you said, hey, you did a good job, or if they didn't do a good job, you can still at least commend their courage for whatever they did do. If I come up here and make a mess out of the service, pastor could say, hey, look, I appreciate you being willing to do this, and it's hard to get up there every day, and I know that takes effort and courage and stuff, but could you spend a little bit more time getting your thoughts organized? I mean, that would be, I think that you would get a better reaction, and, it would be more beneficial to you, and blah, blah, blah. So, but you do need to take correction in life. I'll take correction. I will usually be unhappy when you give it to me, but then I will accept it and apply it later on. I've done wrong things and realized I'm wrong, and then gone and made amends, which is not easy, but it's important. I was talking with my son Clell, about cultures. He's more interested in other cultures than some of my children. I work with a lot of Indians, and work very closer with them now than I have in the past. And I've been getting very frustrated with some stuff, and I've been noticing some things. And one of the things about the Indian culture is it's kind of like a Japanese culture. They don't like to lose face. So they tend not to be, there's always exceptions to this, and this is based on my experiences only, but very timid. And it gets frustrating after a while, because it's like, do stuff. You're getting paid good money to do work, get some work done. But there was this one gentleman who was doing some training for us, and he was working for a large company, and he did a very good job. But he told us something was free. He's like, oh yeah, you can turn this feature on, and it doesn't cost you anything, because it only costs you money when you use that feature and blah. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like, the company I know. You turn on they give you a feature, they charge you for the feature. That's why they have the feature, so they can make more money. And a little bit later, we came across some documentation as we were going through the training class. And I asked him about it. I'm like, this doesn't cost anything? He's like, no, blah, blah, blah. And then we came across documentation, and it literally costs twice as much. I mean, it's not 10% more. It's not negligible. It's literally twice as much. And when my colleague says, yeah, this is not free, he didn't respond to that. He pretended, it was like we hadn't said anything. It was completely ignored. He went on with other stuff. I'm like, that's where it's like, am I insane? Did we not talk about this earlier, about how this was free? And now we find out it's not free? And you can't acknowledge something here? So, when you're wrong, admit it and apologize. You don't have to grovel. But even in America, when people don't apologize, they usually go, huh, how about that? Or some dumb response like that. They still acknowledge that in some way what you said. It is hard to admit when we're wrong, but it's something that we should do. Verse 18, he that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. So this is basically a hypocrite. This is an actor. We've talked about that. A hypocrite is not somebody who says something and then goes and does it, per se. Okay, if I say, I don't know, don't speed, because we're supposed to obey the laws of the land. And then you catch me speeding as I'm trying to pass somebody on a 2-lane road. Okay, that's not me being a hypocrite, that's me being inconsistent. Now I can give you excuses for that or reasons, but I still mean don't speed. I still mean that. Now would I say don't speed? Well, I learned when I was in college that sometimes it's dangerous to go the speed limit if everybody else is going faster, okay? I'm not going to say that makes it okay, because it doesn't. But I will say there are circumstances where you can't obey man's law because it actually will increase the danger. If somebody is hurt and they're dying, if you can drive safely at a higher rate of speed, then I think that's probably okay. But I can't make that, I'm not dogmatic. Pastor can come up here and correct me if he wants. That's perfectly fine. But you might get pulled over and get a ticket, and you have to accept those consequences. Lying lips, he uttereth a slander, is fool. So this is really when I talk about the flattering. If you have a boss and you think he's a scumbag, but you tell him nice things, then yeah, that's hypocrisy. You're flattering. That's wrong. I get in trouble sometimes because I tell people that can be abrasive. I learn that they might be abrasive in some ways, but they're actually pretty smart, and I value them. I tell them nice things, and people think I'm like a kiss-up or something. I'm like, no, I try to give everybody positive feedback, except my children. I only yell at my children, because I'm a dad. I try to give my children positive feedback too. It probably just doesn't matter as much after I yell at them. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. Okay, this is where you need to understand some words don't mean what we think they mean. When you want something, you think this is something we desire. But in reality, want means lack. That's actually kind of why it changed meanings for us. If you wanteth not sin, that means that it lacks not sin. Does that make any sense? Titus, does that make any sense? So when if you wanteth bread, you lack bread. So that's why you want it, using our speech now. So, multitude of words, big talkers, that's fools. Multitude of words there wanteth not sin. it is very important to regulate your speech. Everybody likes to talk, but it's really important to listen. It's important for your friends. That's why socialization is important with children when they're young. They have to learn that it's give and take. But as far as this verse is concerned, if you're busy running on about the mouth, you are probably going to say something that's untrue. You need to think about what you say and then say it. I had a boss once who, and I still struggle with this sometimes, but don't have my thoughts formed properly, and then I start talking and I try to figure it out as I go along, and it's kind of like this. Well, I went in and I talked to my boss. This was my first job out of college, and I realized I was making a mess of things, and he said, when you want to come talk to me, think about it. Think about what it is you want to say first, then come talk to me. So that was a little embarrassing, but I saw that it was true. Verse 20, the tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is little worth. The tongue of the just is actually valuable. Think about that. When you have somebody, companies hire people all the time to come in and give them advice. They hire consultants to come in and look at their business and see where they can do a better job. Well, in life, if you have a wise man who's giving you advice, that's really valuable. And why is that so valuable? Because if you don't have wise information, you go and you make very costly, miserable decisions. Titus and MJ went to get a marriage license, and the security guy at the courthouse asked them what they were there for, and they said, we need to get a marriage license. He's like, okay, you need to go back out, go down the block, take a right. It's the funeral parlor? Is that what it was? Okay. Choosing the wrong spouse is, you might as well just be dead. That was his opinion. Young people usually do not make wise decisions regarding marriage. So I get it. But I feel pretty, I have peace. I don't like to use the word feel. My feelings are irrelevant, right? Facts are what matter. Ben Shapiro says facts don't care about your feelings. So don't making decisions on feelings is bad. However, if you pray about stuff, you have biblical reasons, God can give you peace. Okay? So that's kind of where feelings can cross over. But don't just say, I'm going to go bet this month's rent on this, horse at the races. We don't have horse races anymore, but we used to in Boise. I'm going to go bet this money. I got a good feeling about it. Okay, that's not a recipe for success. Your feelings are not good. They will lead you astray. And verse 21, we'll probably close here. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. So want of wisdom. So they don't have wisdom, lack of wisdom. Fools die for lack of wisdom. But the lips of the righteous feed many. That's what we have here. And I don't pat myself on my back and say, I'm righteous. I'm teaching Sunday school, therefore I'm righteous. No, it's the reverse. I'm righteous, and therefore I can teach Sunday school. I always struggled with the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. I'm like, well, that's not me. I got to go get somebody else to pray. Okay, well, getting somebody else to pray is good, but I am righteous because I have righteousness that Jesus gave me. Okay, and so I realized that. I was like, So I might not be a great Christian in my mind my standards, but guess what? None of us are great Christians. We can all do better. When I was at Bob Jones, which is a very conservative, or at least it was, I haven't checked on it too much recently, very conservative Christian school, okay? You couldn't hold hands with your girlfriend. You couldn't spend time with a girl except in certain areas where there were chaperones, okay? Girls definitely weren't allowed into the dorms. You couldn't wear jeans most of the time. You know, there's all sorts of regulations. You had to go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time. And then on top of that, there were all sorts of spiritual requirements. You had chapel 4 days a week. And then they expected you to, because this was custom in Independent Baptist, to go to church Wednesday night, Sunday morning, and Sunday night. Sunday morning was, you had to do it on campus, though. I came from a place where we only went to church in the Sunday morning. So it was totally foreign to me to go the other times. But the super Christians, or as we called them, they were called Bojos, or that would get abbreviated to Boj. He's a real Boj. The super Christians they conformed in every way, you know. But those people, I'm sure some of them were good people, but one of them got saved while I was there. Like, so you're a super Christian, but you weren't even saved? He was just conforming externally. But it's easy to look at people that are better than us and in our minds and say, oh, I'm not good enough, right? But God uses imperfect people. He went out of his way to use imperfect people because he gets the glory, not the person, all right? That's why no matter who's pastor here, whatever they do, they're not what the church revolves around. It's God. So our pastor can leave or die or, go up to heaven like Elijah did. Whatever, disappear in some way, and it's not going to destroy our church. We will carry on because it's not about the person. And that's how God works. So the lips of the righteous feed many. You want to learn something? Teach it. That's a life hack for you, okay? I'm learning Proverbs because I'm teaching it. I got very interested in wisdom a couple of years ago. I realized wisdom was key to many things, and I started reading Proverbs a few years ago, and so by teaching it, you can't say, that's an interesting verse. I don't really know what that means. Oh, well. That's why I get mad at commentaries that just skip over it, verses like that. It's like, come on, at least tell me you don't know. Anyway, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. There's no downside to trusting God. You can't trust God too much. Right? We've talked about that. So somebody who has septic drain field issues other than me or knows more might say, boy, he shouldn't be waiting on that. He should do this or that or the other. And I'm like, well, I don't have a clear path forward on how to fix my problem. And I can live with it now. So although I have concerns about things getting worse in the dead of winter, I'm going to trust God because I don't believe he'll let me down there. I don't believe he'll tell me on January 25th that my drain field is, well, it's catastrophically failed now. And, now you're in a world of hurt. You should have done something earlier, Grant. So that's the way we look at things, right? That's the way man looks at things. We can always have opinions about doing stuff. I'm just expecting God to give me an idea, to give me a thought, to lead me to a person who knows what he's doing, who can help, something. I'm waiting for God. I'm not going to sit and do nothing, but I'm waiting for God to give me a hint, a clue. what to do. So I'm doing what you should do when you don't know what to do. And that is, I'm just waiting on God. Okay? I want to do stuff. I get very agitated when things aren't right. I want to fix them. I want to take action. That's why I struggle. Guys, our wives like to tell us stories, and I have to tell my wife, I'm like, okay, does this story end with me having to do some work? Okay? Or are you just telling me a story? Because I got to know. Because if I have to do something, I need to know what it is I have to do. And then we can talk about the story later. And I hate it when if I have to do something, just tell me what it is. What's broken now? I really want to know. So I do understand it's important to listen to my wife, though. So I try to find a balance. So there is no downside to trusting God. We forget sometimes, and that's why it's important to have consistent daily habits. If you come to church, if you forget to read your Bible and not do much praying outside of church, that's bad. But at the very least, if you come to church and you pray, that's better than nothing. You've got something. And so all these things that we have, these routines that we develop, a daily scripture reading, daily prayer, all that stuff is important so that we can remember to pray and do things in our lives. I had forgotten to pray about something I was working on at work, and I was like, I'm having troubles with this issue. I hadn't prayed about it. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, it was annoying, but it wasn't like something was down. I was like, I need to pray about this. And so I prayed. Then it worked. So, God I try to tell my kids, pray, okay? Pray and keep praying. And at the very least, if he doesn't change whatever it is, the problem is, he might give you ideas. He might change your heart, your attitude. He'll change you and give you the way to fix that, give you the tools that you need to make the differences or to do the actions that you need to perform. So trust God. He won't let you down.